What if everything you've been taught about purpose, faith, and the divine was actually a masterclass in control? This isn't a casual thought experiment for a Sunday afternoon. This is a direct, unfiltered challenge to the very bedrock of your understanding. A provocative question designed to hit you right where your most cherished beliefs reside. Imagine for a moment that the narratives you've internalized about why you're here, what you should believe, and who holds the keys to your spiritual fulfillment have been meticulously crafted, not for your genuine enlightenment, but to serve an entirely different agenda. This isn't just about questioning a sermon or a self-help guru. This is about confronting the possibility that the spiritual landscape itself, the vast ocean where you search for meaning, has been charted and controlled by intelligent manipulators for centuries, and continues to be so, right here in modern America. This isn't some fringe conspiracy theory. It's a pattern etched into the very fabric of human history. Consider the chilling, undeniable truth that for over 2,000 years, the concept of divine authority has been consistently leveraged by those in power. From the pharaohs of ancient Egypt, who declared themselves living gods, to medieval European kings whose rule was legitimized by the divine right, to countless leaders throughout history who rallied nations under the banner of a sacred mission. The invocation of a higher power has been a supremely effective tool for control. It's a historical constant, observed across every continent, every culture. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the Americas, they brought not just steel and gunpowder, but also a fervent religious doctrine that justified conquest and subjugation, framing it as a divine mandate to save souls. During the American Civil Rights Movement, some leaders used religious rhetoric to inspire unity and justice, while others twisted scripture to justify segregation and oppression. The same powerful language, wielded for diametrically opposed ends. This isn't to say that all faith is a tool of manipulation. Far from it. It is, however, an undeniable fact that spiritual devotion, that profound human yearning for connection and meaning, has been historically and repeatedly weaponized by intelligent manipulators. These aren't just isolated incidents. They are part of a masterclass in human psychology, a playbook refined over millennia, still profoundly shaping your reality today. Perhaps you felt it, that quiet, persistent hum of dissatisfaction, even when everything on the surface seems perfectly aligned with the American dream. You got the career, maybe the family, the house in the suburbs, the latest tech gadgets, and yet there's still that gnawing emptiness, that unspoken question. Is this all there is? You, the seeker, are deeply familiar with this sensation. It's the existential void, that inherent human longing for purpose, for belonging, for a connection to something greater than the material world. It's the feeling of searching for a compass in a world that often feels like it's spinning out of control, a world where traditional institutions seem to be crumbling and certainty is a luxury few can afford. In contemporary society, with its relentless pace, its endless choices, and its often isolating digital connections, this void can feel particularly acute. We are bombarded with narratives about success, happiness, and fulfillment, yet so many of us feel adrift, longing for genuine meaning. This search makes us vulnerable, not in a weak sense, but in an open, yearning way. It's an open heart, an open mind, an open wound, if you will, that cries out for answers, for direction, for a sense of belonging that feels authentic and enduring. This vulnerability is precisely what intelligent manipulators understand and exploit with chilling precision. They are not merely opportunistic, they are strategic. They are the manipulator, an individual or entity, be it a charismatic leader, a well-structured organization, or an alluring ideology personified, who possesses an almost uncanny understanding of human psychology. They see the seeker's inner world, that fertile ground of existential questions and spiritual yearning, and they know exactly how to plant their seeds. They recognize that in this modern era, where traditional religious affiliations are declining and many identify as spiritual but not religious, the search for meaning is more fervent and fragmented than ever. This creates a perfect storm, an environment ripe for those who offer seemingly simple, profound answers to complex, deeply personal questions. They don't just offer guidance. They offer a complete, pre-packaged reality, a ready-made purpose that promises to fill that void. This script isn't an attack on your personal faith, nor is it a cynical dismissal of spirituality. Instead, it's a revelation, an unmasking of the hidden mechanics behind how these intelligent manipulators operate. We will expose their sophisticated playbook, detailing how they leverage powerful concepts of God and faith, twisting them into narratives that offer false solutions, ultimately gaining control over individuals' beliefs, actions, and very sense of self. You will learn to identify the subtle rhetoric, the psychological traps, and the calculated strategies that transform a genuine search for salvation into a journey of subtle subjugation. The goal here is not to breed cynicism, but to cultivate discernment, to empower you, the seeker, with the knowledge to protect your own inner world and reclaim your authentic spiritual autonomy. The stakes, as we move forward, are incredibly high. Imagine living your life believing you are on a divine path, only to discover that every step you take, every sacrifice you make, every belief you hold, is actually reinforcing someone else's power and control over you. This isn't a hypothetical scenario. It is the lived reality for countless individuals caught in the intricate webs woven by intelligent manipulators. What you don't know about these tactics could be profoundly shaping your reality, limiting your freedom, and diverting your life's purpose towards an agenda that is not your own. This journey will fundamentally alter how you perceive not only faith and power dynamics, but also your own existential journey, empowering you to navigate the spiritual landscape with clarity and self-possession. You have an inherent right to define your own meaning, to forge your own connection to the divine, free from the subtle chains of manipulation. Before we can equip you with the tools to recognize and dismantle these sophisticated structures of control, we must first lay the groundwork. We need to intimately understand the very fertile soil upon which these manipulators sow their seeds. So, let's delve deeper into the nature of that profound, universal human experience that makes us so incredibly susceptible, the existential void itself. That profound, universal human experience, the existential void itself, isn't some abstract philosophical concept reserved for dusty textbooks. It's a visceral, often unspoken reality for millions right here in modern America. It's the unsettling quiet after the applause fades, the hollow feeling despite a promotion and a bigger paycheck, or the nagging sense of detachment even when surrounded by loved ones at a Thanksgiving dinner. This isn't just about feeling sad. It's a deeper, more fundamental unease. Have you ever felt that gnawing emptiness, even when everything seems fine on the surface? That subtle, persistent question in the back of your mind, wondering if there's more to life than the daily grind, the pursuit of material comforts, or the endless scroll through social media feeds. This isn't a sign of weakness. It's a profound, inherent human need for meaning, purpose, and connection that, for many, remains unfulfilled in our contemporary landscape. Look around. We live in an era of unprecedented technological advancement and material abundance, yet anxiety, depression, and a pervasive sense of aimlessness are skyrocketing. Why is this void so prevalent today? Part of it stems from the rapid societal shifts we've witnessed. Traditional institutions that once provided clear frameworks for meaning, family units, local communities, established religious organizations, have seen their influence wane. The once clear path laid out by an industrial economy has dissolved into a gig economy, leaving many adrift in a sea of endless choices and self-reinvention. We're bombarded with an overwhelming deluge of information from every corner of the internet, creating a paradox where we're more connected than ever, yet often feel more isolated and insignificant. Every success story on LinkedIn, every curated vacation photo on Instagram, every perfectly sculpted influencer body on TikTok subtly whispers that you might not be enough, that your life lacks the spark others seem to possess. This constant comparison, coupled with the erosion of shared narratives, leaves a cavernous vacuum. Humans are meaning-making creatures. We crave a story for our lives, a sense of belonging to something larger than ourselves. When that fundamental need goes unmet, the void expands, becoming an aching, palpable absence. It's a gaping hole that demands to be filled. And here lies the critical problem. This profound human need for meaning, when left unattended, creates a powerful vacuum that intelligent manipulators are uniquely positioned to exploit. They don't just see individuals. They see potential vessels for their own agendas, recognizing this deep-seated yearning as the ultimate leverage. Consider the seeker, a composite of every individual grappling with these questions. They might be chasing the next promotion, believing that career success will finally bring fulfillment, only to find the void still there. They might jump from relationship to relationship, hoping a partner will complete them, only to discover that external love can't fill an internal emptiness. They might dive into consumerism, buying the latest gadgets, cars, or designer clothes, convinced that these possessions will somehow confer identity or happiness, only to experience a fleeting thrill followed by a familiar sense of dissatisfaction. This relentless, often unconscious search for external validation or quick fixes is precisely what makes the majority of people so vulnerable. They are desperately seeking purpose, belonging, and answers, often unaware of the profound psychological and spiritual mechanisms at play. The conflict, then, is an intensely personal one, yet it plays out on a global stage. It's the internal struggle of the seeker, yearning for authentic meaning versus the external forces, the clever, charismatic, the manipulator, who are ready and waiting to define that meaning for them on their own terms. This isn't just about cults and remote compounds. It's about the subtle, insidious ways this dynamic manifests in our daily lives. Think about the self-help gurus promising instant enlightenment if you just follow their expensive program, the online communities offering belonging in exchange for unwavering ideological adherence, or even the political movements that provide a clear enemy and a divine mission to unite their followers. This search for meaning manifests in countless relatable, everyday examples. It's the college graduate questioning the purpose of their degree after years of schooling. It's the mid-career professional feeling burned out and purposeless despite achieving every benchmark. It's the individual struggling with relationship after relationship, always feeling incomplete. It's the quiet despair of someone who has everything by societal standards: a big house, a nice car, a seemingly perfect family, yet feels profoundly lost. These are not isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a collective hunger for a sense of significance that our modern world often fails to provide. And it is this very hunger, this deep-seated vulnerability, that manipulators meticulously identify and target, turning an earnest quest for meaning into an opportunity for control. Recognizing this profound human need, intelligent manipulators don't waste time with random attempts. Instead, they operate with a precision that would make a seasoned Silicon Valley marketer envious, meticulously scanning the emotional landscape for specific psychological tells. They are looking for the subtle signs of spiritual searching, the quiet hum of disillusionment with conventional life, the pang of loneliness, or that desperate, almost primal need for belonging that echoes through the soul. These aren't weaknesses in the seeker. Rather, they are indicators of an open heart, an open mind, an open wound, a space ready to receive. The manipulator's first moves are rarely confrontational or demanding. Instead, they are masterfully crafted invitations, extended with an almost irresistible warmth. They present themselves as enlightened guides, offering unconditional acceptance and a clear, unwavering path to purpose and peace, a stark contrast to the chaotic, often meaningless world the seeker has been navigating. Consider the charismatic figure who emerges in an online community dedicated to personal growth, or the magnetic speaker at a self-help seminar promising a breakthrough, or even the seemingly compassionate leader within a niche spiritual movement. Their initial approach is always one of profound understanding, of seeing the seeker's pain and offering a genuine comfort that feels like a balm to the soul. This isn't a direct assault on autonomy. It's a soft, almost imperceptible invitation into what appears to be a supportive, nurturing environment. The manipulator is highly skilled at reading human emotions, instantly recognizing the unspoken anxieties and crafting messages that resonate deeply with the seeker's unmet needs. The revelation here is that the initial allure isn't built on deception, but on genuine comfort and understanding, a strategic offering that makes the subsequent slide into control almost imperceptible. But make no mistake, these tactics are far from new. They're deeply rooted in ancient strategies of power and influence, honed over centuries. To truly understand the manipulator's playbook, we must look beyond modern psychology and acknowledge the timeless wisdom of figures like Niccolò Machiavelli and Sun Tzu. While Machiavelli may not have penned treatises on divine revelation, he possessed an unparalleled understanding of the human need for justification, even divine justification, when wielding power. His observations on political and military control offer chilling parallels to the methods used by intelligent manipulators in spiritual contexts. As Machiavelli famously noted, men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate necessities that a deceiver will always find someone who will let himself be deceived. This isn't a cynical dismissal of humanity. It's a stark recognition of our inherent susceptibility to those who promise quick fixes to our deepest needs. Similarly, Sun Tzu's wisdom, often applied to warfare, about knowing oneself and one's enemy, can be recontextualized to empower the seeker. By understanding both our own existential vulnerabilities and the manipulator's calculated tactics, we gain a shield. This deepens our understanding that these aren't random acts of influence, but calculated strategies, refined over centuries of human interaction. The veneer of spiritual guidance, however comforting, often masks a strategic, relentless pursuit of power, echoing countless historical examples where religious authority was inextricably intertwined with political control, from ancient empires to modern cults. Learning these principles is not about becoming a manipulator, but about arming oneself with the knowledge to protect one's own autonomy. It sets the stage for the specific principles manipulators employ to create dependence through what appears to be unwavering faith. The first core principle of this manipulation is the crafting of seemingly perfect solutions to the seeker's existential void, solutions that inevitably lead to profound dependence. The manipulator doesn't merely identify the void. They actively and strategically provide a ready-made framework of meaning, purpose, and belonging, a framework entirely contingent on their leadership, their doctrine, their very presence. They don't just hand you a map to navigate your spiritual journey. They become the map, and only they hold the compass, dictating every turn and every destination. This involves presenting a specific, often highly restrictive, interpretation of God, faith, or spiritual truth as the only valid path, subtly but effectively discrediting all other avenues of inquiry, self-discovery, or alternative spiritual traditions. Think of situations where individuals are subtly, then overtly, encouraged to rely solely on the manipulator for spiritual guidance, for the interpretation of sacred texts, or even for everyday decision-making, gradually, almost imperceptibly, eroding their capacity for independent thought and judgment. History is replete with examples where blind faith has been exploited. As the philosopher Bertrand Russell once warned, collective fear stimulates herd instinct and tends to produce ferocity toward those who are not regarded as members of the herd. This highlights the dangers of unquestioning obedience, where critical thinking is replaced by groupthink. The contrast is stark. The majority, caught in the grip of their existential hunger, seeks external answers, while the informed individual learns to cultivate internal wisdom, a self-reliance that no manipulator can penetrate. This principle reveals how the initial comfort offered, that soothing balm for the soul, quickly morphs into a subtle, yet potent, form of spiritual captivity. Therefore, I choose to question every solution that demands my surrender, every path that funnels me toward a single external authority. But the manipulator's tactics don't stop there. They delve deeper, twisting the very fabric of belief itself. The second principle details how intelligent manipulators twist and weaponize the powerful, sacred concepts of God, divine purpose, and faith to solidify their control. They frame their entire agenda, their every command, as God's will or a divine mission, making any form of dissent or questioning synonymous with defying the sacred itself. Your doubts aren't just doubts. They become portrayed as a test of your faith, a challenge from the divine, a spiritual failing that only the manipulator can help you overcome. This strategy instills a profound, often paralyzing fear of spiritual repercussion for noncompliance, using the potent combination of guilt and the promise of eternal reward or punishment as powerful motivators. Imagine followers encouraged to sacrifice personal resources, to sever crucial relationships, or to abandon critical thinking for the greater good of the group or leader, all under the guise of serving a higher power. The manipulator skillfully positions themselves as the sole, infallible interpreter of this divine will, making any direct, unmediated connection to the divine seem utterly impossible without their intercession. This principle transforms faith from a deeply personal journey of spiritual exploration into a tool for unquestioning compliance, where loyalty to the manipulator effectively becomes loyalty to God. This sophisticated intertwining of divine purpose with a personal agenda is far from a modern invention. The strategies employed by the manipulator, while cloaked in contemporary language and digital platforms, are echoes of ancient principles of control, refined over millennia by the most astute observers of human nature. We're talking about a playbook written not in the last decade, but across centuries by figures whose names resonate with the very essence of power dynamics. Consider Niccolò Machiavelli, the Florentine statesman whose insights into political philosophy were so starkly realistic that his name became synonymous with cunning and expediency. While Machiavelli may not have been penning treatises on spiritual guidance, his profound understanding of how to acquire and maintain power over populations offers a chillingly accurate blueprint for how intelligent manipulators operate in the spiritual realm today. Machiavelli understood that the masses, often driven by immediate needs and simple desires, are inherently susceptible to those who promise order, security, or a clear path. He wasn't talking about God, per se, but he absolutely grasped the human inclination to seek divine justification for worldly power, recognizing how easily faith could be leveraged to rally support or quell dissent. His infamous observation, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate necessities that a deceiver will always find someone who will let himself be deceived," cuts to the core of the seeker's vulnerability. It highlights that the longing for meaning, for a quick fix to the existential void, creates an open door for anyone who presents a compelling, albeit false, solution. This isn't about moral judgment. It's a cold, hard assessment of human psychology that manipulators have exploited for ages. They recognize that when the seeker is desperate for answers, for belonging, for purpose, the critical faculties often dim, making them ripe for deception. Then there's Sun Tzu, the legendary Chinese military strategist whose ancient text, The Art of War, remains a cornerstone of strategic thinking, even influencing modern business and psychological warfare. Sun Tzu's wisdom, often boiled down to the maxim, "Know yourself and know your enemy, and you need not fear the result of 100 battles," provides an invaluable lens through which to view the manipulator's tactics. For the seeker, knowing oneself means understanding the depth of their own existential void, recognizing their yearning for meaning, and acknowledging their susceptibility to promises of salvation. Knowing the enemy, in this context, means dissecting the manipulator's methods, seeing through the benevolent facade to the calculated pursuit of power and control beneath. Sun Tzu's principles teach us that every action, every word, Every gesture from the manipulator is not random. It is part of a deliberate strategy to achieve a desired outcome. These aren't just abstract historical footnotes. These are the foundational texts of power dynamics that have been reinterpreted and reapplied across countless generations and contexts, from ancient empires to modern cults, from political movements to the very self-help gurus who promise enlightenment. Throughout history, the veneer of spiritual guidance has frequently masked a strategic pursuit of power. Think of the divine right of kings, where monarchs claimed their authority directly from God, making any challenge to their rule an act of sacrilege. Or consider the historical intertwining of religious institutions with political control in various civilizations, where spiritual leaders wielded immense temporal power, often dictating not just beliefs, but laws, social structures, and even military campaigns. In these scenarios, faith was not merely a personal journey. It was a societal glue, meticulously crafted and controlled by those at the top to maintain their dominion. Even in American history, we see echoes of this, where religious rhetoric has been strategically deployed to justify everything from westward expansion and manifest destiny to specific social and political movements. The language of divine blessing and righteous cause can be incredibly potent in shaping public opinion and mobilizing individuals, making them feel like they are part of something larger than themselves, something sacred. The manipulator, in our contemporary landscape, understands this deeply. They know that by aligning their personal agenda with what the seeker perceives as divine will, they can tap into an almost unstoppable force of loyalty and obedience. The purpose of examining these ancient roots is not to learn how to manipulate others, but precisely the opposite, to empower the seeker to recognize these timeless strategies when they are deployed against them. By understanding that these aren't new tricks, but rather sophisticated applications of age-old principles of control, one can begin to dismantle their power. It reveals that the comfort and understanding initially offered by the manipulator are not acts of genuine altruism, but calculated first steps in a long game of influence. The deeper revelation is that the search for spiritual connection, when not grounded in critical awareness, can become the very pathway through which one's autonomy is slowly, subtly, and systematically eroded. This knowledge arms the seeker not with a weapon, but with a shield, allowing them to see the strings behind the puppet show of manufactured faith. It's about recognizing that the grand narratives of purpose and salvation often come with a hidden cost, the surrender of one's independent thought and agency. It is this surrender that the manipulator actively cultivates, leading us directly to the first principle they employ to create an unbreakable dependence through their carefully constructed false solutions. The moment the manipulator senses that profound vacuum within the seeker, that aching hunger for something more, they don't hesitate. They don't just identify the gaping chasm within you. They immediately present a meticulously crafted bridge, one that appears sturdy, inviting, and uniquely designed for your specific journey. This is the first foundational principle of their control, creating dependence through what appear to be perfect, divine solutions to your existential void. They understand that most people, desperate for an end to the gnawing uncertainty, will grasp at any lifeline, especially one bathed in the comforting glow of spiritual promise. The manipulator doesn't offer you a map to navigate the complex terrain of existence. Instead, they become the map itself, and only they hold the compass. They don't empower you to find your own way. They insist that their way is the only way, the singular path ordained by a higher power, a divine blueprint laid out just for you, and only they possess the wisdom to interpret it. This isn't about guiding you to an answer. It's about making themselves the indispensable answer. They present a specific interpretation of God, of faith, of spiritual truth as the absolute, undisputed reality, subtly, yet relentlessly, discrediting every other avenue of inquiry. Your personal philosophical explorations, your scientific curiosity, even the wisdom passed down through your family, all are subtly painted as incomplete, misguided, or even dangerous distractions from the one true path they offer. Consider how this plays out in real life, perhaps in a community that promises ultimate belonging or a leader who speaks with unwavering certainty. Initially, they might seem incredibly supportive, a beacon of light in a confusing world. They offer clear answers to life's biggest questions. Why are we here? What is our purpose? What happens after this life? Questions that have plagued humanity for millennia are suddenly resolved with neat, digestible doctrines. But look closer. Are you encouraged to meditate on these answers, to test them against your own intuition, to explore alternative perspectives? Rarely. Instead, you are encouraged to internalize them, to believe them without reservation, because to question them is to question the source, the manipulator, and by extension, the divine itself. This insidious process gradually erodes your capacity for independent thought. The manipulator becomes your spiritual GPS, guiding not just your faith, but your career choices, your relationships, your financial decisions, even how you spend your free time. Is this job aligned with God's will? You might ask, and the answer comes not from your own internal discernment, but from the manipulator, often framed as a divine revelation or a deep spiritual insight that only they possess. You stop reading books that challenge their doctrine. You shy away from conversations with outsiders who might plant seeds of doubt, and you begin to defer almost every significant choice to their enlightened counsel. The comfort of having all your answers prepackaged morphs into a quiet dependence, a subtle form of spiritual captivity where your own mind becomes a prisoner of another's design. Think about the profound human need for certainty, especially in an uncertain world. The manipulator capitalizes on this, offering an airtight worldview where every doubt is addressed, every fear is soothed, and every complex question has a simple, unwavering answer. This false sense of security is incredibly alluring. It allows the seeker to offload the heavy burden of existential inquiry, trading personal responsibility for spiritual clarity. But this clarity comes at a steep price: your autonomy. You are led to believe that your salvation, your purpose, your very well-being is inextricably linked to adherence to their doctrine and loyalty to their leadership. The wisdom of the ages warns against this very trap. As the philosopher Bertrand Russell once noted, the whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, and wiser people so full of doubts. The manipulator thrives on certainty, projecting an unshakable conviction that often masks their true agenda. They position themselves as the sole conduit of divine knowledge, making direct connection to the divine seem impossible without their intercession. This isn't about fostering your spiritual growth. It's about cultivating your reliance on them, ensuring that every step you take on your spiritual journey must first pass through their interpretation, their approval, their blessing. While the majority of people might unconsciously seek external validation and quick fixes for their deepest questions, the informed individual learns to cultivate internal wisdom. They understand that true spiritual growth is a journey of personal discovery, often messy and uncertain, but ultimately empowering. The manipulator, however, offers a shortcut, a fast lane to perceived enlightenment that bypasses the hard work of self-reflection and critical inquiry. They prey on the human desire for ease, for a ready-made purpose, presenting a spiritual framework that feels like a warm embrace, but is, in reality, a gilded cage. This initial comfort, this seductive promise of answers, quickly transforms into a subtle yet powerful form of spiritual captivity. The seeker, believing they have found salvation or purpose, finds themselves increasingly enmeshed, their sense of self-worth and identity becoming intertwined with their adherence to the manipulator's narrative. They are no longer free to explore, to question, to doubt, because the cost of doing so is framed as spiritual abandonment, a betrayal of the divine path. The fear of being lost again, of returning to that gnawing void, becomes a potent weapon in the manipulator's arsenal. So, As you navigate this complex landscape of meaning and faith, remember this critical insight. True spiritual guidance empowers you to find your own path, not to surrender to another's. I choose to question every solution that demands my surrender, knowing that genuine truth invites inquiry, not blind obedience. This understanding is crucial because the manipulator's next step is to weaponize the very concept of belief itself, twisting it into a tool for even deeper control. The seeker, already reliant on the external solutions provided, is now primed for the next, most insidious phase. Once the manipulator has established themselves as the exclusive purveyor of truth, a dangerous alchemy begins, transforming the sacred into a potent instrument of subjugation. This is where belief itself becomes a weapon, where the very notion of God and divine purpose is twisted to serve an earthly agenda. The manipulator deftly frames their every command, every doctrine, every request as God's will. Their personal ambitions, their desire for power, their need for control, all are cloaked in the sacred mantle of a divine mission, making dissent not just disagreement, but an act of spiritual rebellion. Imagine the seeker wrestling with a nagging doubt or a personal inclination that clashes with the manipulator's teachings. Perhaps they long to reconnect with an old friend who has been subtly, or not so subtly, branded as a negative influence by the manipulator. Or maybe they feel a deep-seated unease about sacrificing their life savings to a cause that seems to benefit the manipulator far more than any stated divine purpose. These aren't just personal struggles for the seeker. The manipulator ensures they become existential crises. Your doubts aren't just doubts. The manipulator might intone, their voice resonating with an unshakable certainty. They're a test of your faith, a challenge from the divine itself. Do you truly believe in the path God has laid before you, or will you succumb to the whispers of the adversary? This strategy instills a profound fear of spiritual repercussion for noncompliance. The seeker is led to believe that questioning the manipulator is tantamount to questioning God, that deviation from the prescribed path will result in not just earthly misfortune, but eternal damnation. Guilt becomes a constant companion, a heavy cloak woven from the threads of perceived spiritual inadequacy. The promise of eternal reward, a place in heaven, divine favor, ultimate peace, is dangled like a golden carrot, always just out of reach, contingent entirely on unwavering obedience. Conversely, the threat of eternal punishment, of being cast out, of losing salvation, becomes a powerful, paralyzing motivator. The seeker is encouraged to sacrifice personal resources, their time, their money, their talents, for the greater good of the group or leader. Relationships with family members who express concern, career opportunities that might take them away from the immediate sphere of influence, even critical thinking itself. All are deemed secondary to serving this higher power, as interpreted and dictated solely by the manipulator. The manipulator positions themselves as the indispensable intermediary, the sole interpreter of this divine will. Direct connection to the divine is made to seem impossible, or at least profoundly unreliable, without their intercession. The seeker is told that only the manipulator possesses the unique spiritual insight, the direct line to the divine, to correctly interpret sacred texts, to understand the true meaning of prophecies, or to guide the flock through the treacherous currents of a fallen world. This transforms faith from a personal, introspective journey into a transactional tool for compliance, where loyalty to the manipulator is seamlessly equated with loyalty to God. As the philosopher Eric Hoffer once observed in his seminal work, The True Believer, the fanatic is not really a man of action. He is a man of faith. And faith, when it is complete, does not need to be acted upon. It is a state of being. The fanatic is not a man who believes in something very strongly. He is a man who must believe in something very strongly. This captures the essence of how belief, once weaponized, can compel individuals to surrender their autonomy. With this foundation of weaponized belief firmly in place, The manipulator then moves to solidify their control by systematically isolating the seeker. This is principle 3, isolating the seeker and controlling information. They don't just guide your path. They prune your garden, meticulously removing anything that doesn't bloom in their desired direction. The goal is to create an echo chamber, a self-contained universe where the manipulator's narrative is the only one heard, the only truth accepted. This insidious process often begins subtly, with gentle suggestions to spend more time with like-minded individuals within the group and less time with outsiders who might not understand the seeker's new spiritual journey. Old friends, concerned family members, former colleagues. Anyone who might offer alternative perspectives or raise critical questions are gradually demonized or dismissed as negative influences, worldly distractions, or even agents of doubt. The control of information is equally crucial. External media, academic sources, scientific findings, or even other spiritual traditions are often branded as misguided, corrupt, or dangerous. The internet, a vast ocean of information, is reframed as a cesspool of deception, with only the manipulator's carefully curated content deemed safe and true. The seeker is encouraged to consume only what the manipulator provides: approved books, sermons, podcasts, or online forums. The goal is to make the manipulator the sole source of truth and validation, creating a closed system where critical thinking is not just discouraged, but actively stifled. Think of it like a digital detox gone wrong, where instead of unplugging for personal well-being, the seeker is unplugged from everything but the manipulator's frequency. This isolation reinforces the seeker's dependence, making it incredibly difficult to escape the manipulator's narrative, as there are no external reference points left to challenge it. The world outside the manipulator's orbit becomes a hostile, confusing place, making the perceived safety of the controlled environment even more appealing. Next, the manipulator employs Principle 4, the illusion of choice and the false dilemma. This is a masterful psychological trick where freedom is mimicked, but never truly granted. The manipulator understands that outright restriction of freedom can breed resentment and rebellion. Instead, they craft an illusion of choice, presenting options that, regardless of selection, ultimately serve their agenda. The seeker is made to feel empowered, to believe they're exercising their free will, unaware that the entire choice architecture has been designed to channel them towards a specific, predetermined outcome. "You are free to choose," the manipulator might declare with a benevolent smile, "but only from the paths that lead back to me, to our divine mission." This often involves creating false dilemmas. The only good or righteous options are those that align perfectly with the manipulator's will, while all other alternatives are painted as spiritually perilous, morally corrupt, or simply not God's plan. Perhaps the seeker is given the choice between taking on a new, demanding volunteer role within the manipulator's organization, which benefits the manipulator directly, or spending more time in solitary prayer and reflection, which keeps the seeker isolated and focused inward on the manipulator's teachings. Both choices, while seemingly different, prevent the seeker from pursuing external interests, questioning the structure, or engaging with alternative communities. The seeker feels a sense of agency, a belief that they are actively participating in their spiritual growth, when in reality, they are merely navigating a maze designed with only one exit, deeper into the manipulator's control. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely observed, freedom is not the right to do what you want, but the ability to do what is right. The manipulator twists this, making what is right synonymous with what I want you to do, thus making true freedom an elusive phantom. This carefully constructed environment of dependence, weaponized belief, isolation, and false choice sets the stage for Principle 5, emotional and spiritual blackmail. This is one of the most potent tools in the manipulator's arsenal, leveraging the seeker's deepest fears to enforce compliance. The seeker's genuine desire for spiritual well-being, their yearning for connection to the divine, and their fear of the unknown become vulnerabilities to be exploited. Your devotion isn't just a gift, the manipulator implies. their tone laced with a subtle threat. It's a debt, and the interest is your unquestioning obedience. The manipulator will subtly or overtly imply that any deviation from their teachings, any questioning of their authority, will result in spiritual catastrophe. This could manifest as warnings of divine retribution for disobedience, implying that personal misfortunes or setbacks are direct punishments from a displeased God. The threat of losing salvation, eternal reward, or even the love and acceptance of the group becomes a powerful emotional bind. The seeker is constantly made to feel a sense of spiritual inadequacy, a nagging belief that they are never quite enough, never quite holy enough, never quite devoted enough. Only the manipulator, with their superior insight and direct divine connection, can alleviate this gnawing feeling, offering absolution and guidance back to the right path. This tactic preys on the fundamental human need for belonging and acceptance, making the cost of leaving or disagreeing seem astronomically high, leading to a profound sense of entrapment. It is a dark twisting of faith, transforming it from a source of comfort into a weapon of control, leaving the seeker perpetually on edge, desperate to please. Finally, the manipulator cements their ultimate control through Principle 6, the cult of personality and divine intermediary. Having created an intricate web of dependence, fear, and controlled information, the manipulator then elevates themselves to an almost divine status. They don't just speak for God. They become the voice you hear, the face you see when you think of the divine. They present themselves as uniquely gifted, chosen, or enlightened, the only one capable of interpreting complex spiritual matters, receiving direct divine revelations, or possessing the true key to salvation. This position of unchallengeable authority makes any criticism of them feel like sacrilege, a direct affront to God itself. Think of the elaborate stories the manipulator might weave, tales of miraculous healings attributed to their touch, prophecies they alone received, profound spiritual experiences that set them apart from ordinary mortals. These narratives are designed to inspire awe, reverence, and unquestioning loyalty. The manipulator becomes the gatekeeper to salvation, enlightenment, or true understanding, reinforcing the idea that without them, the seeker is hopelessly lost, adrift in a sea of spiritual confusion. This principle effectively replaces the direct, personal spiritual connection the seeker initially sought with a mediated one, where the manipulator stands squarely in the middle, an indispensable conduit to the divine. This echoes the historical warnings against idolatry and the deification of human leaders, where the reverence meant for the divine is tragically misdirected to a fallible human, leading to immense power imbalances and potential abuse. Now, having laid bare the manipulator's playbook, it's time to shift the focus to you. The greatest defense isn't a shield, it's an awakened mind. This is Principle 7, the path to self-empowerment, recognizing the signs. Awareness is the first and most crucial step towards reclaiming your autonomy, your inherent right to define your own meaning. You now possess the framework to identify the patterns we've discussed, the insidious creation of dependence, the chilling weaponization of belief, the subtle isolation from external influences, the clever illusion of choice, the crushing weight of emotional and spiritual blackmail, and the seductive allure of the cult of personality. Practical advice is not just about knowing these tactics, but seeing them in action. Pay close attention to how information is controlled in any group or movement you encounter. Is critical thinking encouraged, or is questioning met with discomfort, dismissal, or even hostility? Observe whether fear or genuine, unconditional love is the primary motivator within a spiritual context. Does a leader demand absolute obedience, or do they empower you to think for yourself and cultivate your own inner wisdom? Trust your intuition, that quiet voice inside you that signals when something feels off, when a demand feels too extreme, or when a promise seems too good to be true. Critically examine any teaching or leader that discourages external inquiry, that tells you their way is the only way, or that seeks to isolate you from your support network. Remember, true spiritual growth often thrives in openness, not in closed systems. You choose to see clearly, to question deeply, and to trust your inner discernment. Recognizing the signs is powerful, but breaking free and reclaiming your authentic meaning requires action. This is the essence of breaking free, reclaiming authentic meaning. Freedom isn't given. It's taken one conscious step at a time. If you recognize yourself or someone you care about in these patterns, here are concrete strategies to reclaim your path. First, actively reestablish diverse social connections. Reach out to old friends, family members, or colleagues who represent different perspectives.